Hello, assistants. God bless you and welcome to one more Strengthening Our Salvation. And today we're going to talk about something very different. A few days ago I was doing a service here in Finsbury Park, and I mentioned a Bible verse that I think probably everyone who was sitting in the service had never really stopped to either read or had the knowledge of this Bible verse, because when we spoke about it, they thought, surely this is a prank. But no, it's not. And that made me think how many people, even people who do the work of God, assistants, and even pastors, they have a wrong idea of how God works. So let's look into this. The Bible says, Deuteronomy chapter 7 verse 22 says, "And the Lord your God will drive out those nations before you little by little. You will be unable to destroy them at once, lest the beasts of the field become too numerous or too many for you." Actually, there are two instances in the Bible that God speaks about this. Exodus speaks about the same, that when God would give the victory to Israel over their enemies, he would not do this at once. He would do this little by bit, by little, step by step. And he said, if you have your victory too quick, then there'll be too many beasts, wild animals in the land that will affect you. And that makes sense. If you think about it, the only alpha predator, there's no greater alpha predator than men. There's no animal. Bishop, the lion is stronger than man. Well, physically, yes, but not mentally. Not in terms of intelligence. And that's why there is no animal that a man can't capture. So if God was to eradicate all of the enemies of Israel from the land and leave only Israel, then there would be no one to have this balance, to create this balance of hunting. And the beasts of the field will be too many for the nation of Israel to try to control. But the interesting point here is that we begin to see here a different understanding to what many people have. Because many people believe that the victories that come from God have to happen, and they have to happen now, quickly, immediately, at once. But here God says, no, they will happen step by step. And if you think about it, this makes perfect sense, because think about someone who became rich overnight. Think about people who won the lottery. Many of those who won the lottery, they became poor again. Because overnight, they were left with millions. And they didn't know how to manage the little they had initially. How would they manage millions? And they squandered what they had. Usually, how many stories do we see of people who were famous pop stars, famous movie stars, famous sports people, who lost everything they had, who filed for bankruptcy because they became successes, household names overnight, and they didn't know how to manage their success. And so a lot of people don't understand that that's not how God works. God, he guides us to step by step achieve his promises. It can't be all the promises of God at once. If you think about it, for example, when you started in the church, you came to the church because you had many problems, but you didn't receive all the blessings that you have now in one day. If you would have come to the church and on the first day you received all the answers to everything you wanted, you wouldn't have come back. What was the purpose? What would be the purpose of you coming back? So in fighting for the blessings of God step by step, we learn perseverance, we learn faithfulness, we learn to depend on God, we learn to rely on God, to rely on His wisdom. So maybe right now, you who serve God, you are going through a problem. You're going through a difficult situation. You're going through a test of your faith. And you wonder, you ask yourself, why doesn't God remove this problem from my life immediately? Friend, depend on Him. Use your faith and depend on Him, because step by step, you will see the promises of God. Don't doubt, but don't think. Also, see that the proximity of the people of Israel to God, if they were close to God, that did not necessarily mean that the blessings came quicker. They still had to come step by step. Otherwise, they wouldn't have known how to manage. And we see that because when they left Egypt, the people were slaves in Egypt for hundreds of years. The generation that was now leaving Egypt, they had not known freedom. They were born in captivity. They were born slaves. So when they walked out of Egypt as free men and women, it's like they went wild because they didn't know how to deal with freedom. So at the first sign of trouble, they turned against God. When they were before the Red Sea, they told Moses, "You brought us out to die here." When Moses tarried a little bit longer on Mount Sinai, they said, "Okay, right, let's make a god of gold for us." They made a golden calf. God had to create all the laws in the Old Testament to give them boundaries, because they went from having restrictions and boundaries and not being free to all of a sudden having all the freedom of the world. And they didn't know how to deal with that. So it's better for us, it's important for each one of us that we learn that our progress, spiritually speaking, in our life is step by step. Never forget that. If God told His people, "Listen, I will not drive your enemies all out at once. It will be step by step, so that the beasts of the field will not become too numerous for you." It's because God knew what was best for His people. And He knows what is best for you, you who are faithful to God. All right? I hope that this message blessed you. And if it did, then go ahead and share it with anyone you want. It doesn't have to be an assistant. It can be anybody you want. Okay? God bless you. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.